You can walk around.
Our first day there I thought was a breeze. All I had to do was chip off concrete, and I could handle that. I thought our second day there was going to be fun. It was Saturday, so we didn't have anything to do. We were just going to go to the park. And then Matt told us we'd get to witness to everybody in the park. I freaked. I sit on the back row for a reason. And I decorate the fellowship hall where no one sees me. I do the things upstairs. I like to be out of the public eye. I don't do things where you have to stand in front of people, where you have to talk. I'm not very good at that. So when we got to the park, I made myself as scarce as I possibly could. But in minutes, Butch brought up the first family he met and introduced his new friends. Krista was on the ground with a blanket and some beads making salvation bracelets. All the young people had gathered, all the little kids in the park, and they were playing games. I just kind of sauntered around, making myself as scarce as possible. And I did that quite well for a while. Someone put on one of these little eye gadgets with some speakers and had some music playing. Have you ever noticed how God puts certain people in your lives? He sends them in the most unusual ways. Sometimes your kids grow up together. Sometimes you bump into them at an A&W drive-in. Sometimes you just happen to meet at a sewing circle at your house. Sometimes you're thrown together at a Baptist disaster meeting. Sometimes you have to drive clear across the country or fly to see them once a year. Sometimes your eyes just lock and you just know that they're going to be special to you for the rest of your life. And that's kind of the way it was the day I was saved. We were playing some Christian music on one of these little eye gadgets, and the kids were dancing, and I was kind of just standing there enjoying the music. And in the distance, I could see a lady pedaling her bike with coming up in the distance. Don't ever doubt God has a sense of humor. While I was roaming around, I was enjoying the scenery, and one of the things I thought so comical was the ice cream carts. They were little yellow containers attached to bicycles, and all the vendors had on little yellow slickers. Most of them had on little hats, and they had little kind of squeakers like duck calls, and they all reminded me of little rubber duckies. It just happened my eyes met this lady's, and our eyes locked. And I thought, really, God? You're sending me an ice cream lady? And I don't think our eyes ever left each other's. She stopped when she got to the blanket. And I walked over to her, and in my best Spanish, I asked her if she liked the music. And she said, yes. Christian? And I thought, oh, well, she can understand my Spanish. So in my best Spanish, I asked her if she knew Jesus Christ in her heart. Well, apparently I did that rather well, because she started rattling off, completely in Spanish. Well, then in my best Spanglish, I said, hold on just a minute. Let me get somebody that really speaks Spanish. And I hollered for my son. I found out that she did know Christ, but she was no longer welcome at her church. Her daughter had had a baby out of wedlock, and she was not allowed in her church anymore. At this point, all my intimidation and all my fear and all my wanting to be not where I was at the moment left. And all I could think about was this lady and her situation. Because I know when I'm home, the most comfortable I am is right here. This is where I want to be most of the time. This is where all my friends are. And I can't imagine not being allowed here. So I asked my son to ask her if she would please join us tomorrow at church. And please, would she sit with me? And she just seemed so overwhelmed to be asked not only to join us, but that I would like her to sit with us. That she just started crying, which made me cry, which made Richard cry. And we just went on from there. And Richard and her kept talking, and I'm trying to get him to say, please, and I don't know if this is loud, please invite her to lunch, to come to lunch with us. And when he gets done, he said, Mom, I've already done that. And I've already asked her. So we get through that, and then, you know, the tears are dried up. She goes on. I mean, we hug, and she's talking Spanish a mile a minute, and I'm, you see, you know, it's all good. She goes off, and we continue in the park. We have a good time. We do a little flash dance of our little Hallelujah song over and get all the kids around, and, you know, a little mob dance or whatever it is. Not flash dance, you know, a little mob, you know, where everybody gets flash mob, whatever it is. And I see her come back and get to Richard, and, you know, I leave and I run over and I see what's the matter, and by this time she's pedaling away again. And he said she came back just to get my phone number in case she gets lost on the way to church. So I was so relieved, and I was really hopeful. Richard told me not to get my hopes up, because it happens a lot that, you know, people will say they're going to come to something and don't really show up. Well, the next morning I was so anxious. I couldn't really pay attention during Sunday school, because I was so anxious to hoping that she would be there. That as soon as Sunday school was over, I ran outside to wait for her. Somehow during Sunday school she had snuck in, and she was already there. Her daughter was the most beautiful girl with the biggest, bluest eyes, and the most precious baby I've ever seen. And it was a wonderful, wonderful service, and Krista sat with me and this new family. And when the offering was passed, the daughter took out her little change purse and put in 2 coins, and Krista leaned over to me and just whispered, "That's the widow's mite." After lunch, we were going to leave. We had lunch at the church, and they joined us. We were going to leave, and the daughter just grasped onto my shirt and started talking to Krista. What they were doing was they wanted me to come home with them. And Krista explained that I couldn't, but they said, please, 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 just for a couple hours, just please let her come home with us for a little while. Well, then I couldn't. Could we meet tomorrow night in the park? And, you know, we went through this, and because of our schedule, it just wasn't feasible. Krista and Richard still see them every other day or so in the park, and they still ask when we're coming back. So it's a friendship that I explained to them while we were there that I was leaving, I couldn't be there, but my children would always be there. And they would be there for anything that they needed. They still see them regularly. Of course, every time they do, they have to buy ice cream. And Chris just told me, if next time I come and make a friend, could I please make a friend with the owner of a gym instead of an ice cream peddler, so that, you know, so this is getting quite hefty on her. But that experience, I wouldn't take anything for. It was precious. Oh, this is my next car. Yeah. This was another really precious thing. I really enjoyed those little cars. They were all around. Our interpreter had heard me talking in our van rides about how much I really thought those cars were so cute, so really cute. The ladies that worked in the day center, they worked so that their children would have lunch. Our interpreter had mentioned to them how cute I thought those little cars were. And one day, they called me to the front. They had one of these little taxis waiting outside to take me for a ride. They had pooled their pennies together to pay for a taxi ride for Andy and I to go around the town. They couldn't hardly afford dinner, but they wanted to do something special for us and had pooled their money together to pay for a taxi ride because they knew that that was something special for me. And they stood outside waiting to see the reaction on our face when we got back, to see how much we enjoyed it. And, you know, they say mission trip, you go on a mission trip to do something for someone else. At the end of the whole thing, I felt like we were the ones that were ministered to, not only by the people there, but by our own team. We came back with so many experiences that I don't know that they received nearly as much from us as we received from them and from each other. I do have one regret about the whole thing, and it's that I never went on a mission trip a whole lot sooner.